Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wild. Today we are going right back down the federal rabbit hole with from treatment of gig workers to tip transparency, the app-based gig economy could see key changes in 2022. We've already discussed a bunch of times where the federal government has always been gunning for gig workers and our general freedoms of such. And now they're saying that there could see key changes in 2022. They've been talking about it for a while, and it's kind of been on the to be continued list. And since we're on the back end of the pandemic, let's see what these people are saying will be the key changes in 2022. Let's go over what they're saying, what we think about this, how it actually is, and what we can do about it. And without further ado, let's get started. App-based gig work has been around for more than a decade, yet the laws around how companies should treat the people who do that work are still inconsistent or non-existent. That is factually accurate. There's no real appeal system for deactivations. There's no way for the federal government to really regulate the piss-poor integrity and character that a lot of these companies tend to operate upon. How many times they've outright lied to the general public? That is starting to change though, and 2022 can be a defining year in the march towards equitable treatment of workers who deliver food, give rides, or perform other tasks for companies like Uber Technologies, which launched in 2009, Doordash Incorporated, and Lyft Inc. After California tried to set a precedent that would require companies to classify gig workers as employees, the companies fought back with Prop 22, a big money ballot measure that carved out exceptions for gig companies. The measure was approved by voters in 2020, but eventually ruled unconstitutional. That they've been trying to classify us as employees, and I've been saying this for a while. We do not want to be employees. We want to stay as gig workers because that allows us more opportunity than anything that an employee would give us. That fight in California continues while more battles are brewing. Gig companies are trying to pass laws similar to Prop 22 in other US states, while other countries consider new rules on worker classification. There are also new regulations and court cases that could be transformative, including those addressing how much companies are telling workers they can earn and companies' level of transparency on delivery fees and tips. Laws similar to Prop 22, I mean, you saw that coming from a mile away. They want to keep control. They want to keep independent contractors. We want to keep independent contractors, but we want fair treatment. And that medium just doesn't seem to be coming for us, and it's honestly a disgusting thing. A level of transparency on delivery fees and tips, that's phenomenal. I think customers should know exactly what they're being fed, and tips should be, well, 100% clear to us, not hidden. Doordash. I think there should be a new external system for how the appeal process for deactivation should go. Because obviously, Doordash doesn't have the integrity and character to actually give a fair appeal system, and neither do a lot of these companies. It should be ran by an outside party. The chances of us seeing that before seeing the employee side, slim to none. Vina Dubal, a professor at UC Hastings College of Law who studies the gig economy and has sided with gig workers, said efforts have been going on for a very long time, could finally come to a head in 2022. What efforts are they referring to? You see, every time somebody says we side with gig workers, like, I'm always skeptic. I'm not saying Vina particularly is a bad person, and I'm sure she's a great person. Every time when I hear Doordash say it, I'm already skeptic. I hear Uber say it, I'm already skeptic. Are you really on the side of gig workers, or are you on the side of something that gig workers don't actually want, but you're saying we want it, so clearly we're gonna go for it because you said so? One of the challenges of being a gig worker is that you have to question everything and everyone. If I'm wrongfully accusing her of something unintentionally, that's my fault, but that is a filter that everyone needs to run through. Are her actions and her words matching up? What's her integrity? The regulatory and political pressures are rising as gig workers inside and outside the gig economy are demanding more rights, higher wages, and better working conditions, as local, state, and federal governments are increasingly scrutinizing platforms, practices, and policies, and as gig companies are trying to prove to the investors they could be profitable. This is one of, if not the biggest challenges that gig companies are going to have to deal with in 2022. They're going to have to fight the governments on staying the way they're operating. They're going to have to prove to investors they can actually be profitable. Us as gig workers are unfortunately still fighting for those rights and wages. We're just going to be left on the wayside. The backstory to all this is rising income inequality, said Katie Wells, a postdoctoral research fellow at Georgetown University, whose research centers on the Washington, D.C. gig economy. She said gig companies filled different needs, took advantage of the weakening of labor rights over the past few decades, then exacerbated the rising inequality because the business model is predatory towards their workers. This is a very interesting statement, and there's a lot to unpack here. Let's go over it little by little. Backstory to all this is the rising income inequality. Yeah, I've been paid more as a Doordash driver, as a gig worker as a whole, than I've ever been in any job. And it's amazing to me how people can look down on you because you're a Doordash driver, because you're a gig worker. Meanwhile, it's because of this where people are noticing that their financial situation is nowhere near what it should be. Took advantage of weakening labor rights. That's just it. Between HR departments, how you're treated from your boss, and other factors that are truly proving that companies don't care about their people, all that with the Great Resignation, I think what they're not realizing is that they need to treat their people better or they'll just leave. And they could do that. And it's not even just DoorDash or just any of the jobs. Like, people are just starting side hustles and then they're becoming more profitable from their side hustles than their jobs. So they go all in on their side hustle, turning that to their main hustle. They become successful in the eyes of most people, that is. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. Employment is not meant to be a long-term goal. Even independent contract work, gig work, is not meant to be a long-term goal. Every one of these companies has a season in your life, but it should never be the main goal. Yeah, it's always been predatory, but we in the gig economy have made channels and made real resources for people so that way they can actually work the way they're supposed to work. The point of us even making channels like this is so that way you could run it through the filter of experience and how it actually is and should be, not just what these companies are telling. They're not in the business to solve social problems. No, they're in the business to make money, and that's clear. The core question for the gig economy is worker classification. Companies treat app-based workers as independent contractors, avoiding standard features of employment like minimum wages, taxes, and other costs. Many argue workers fit the current legal definition of employees. This is the first time where somebody talked about standard features of employment. They didn't talk about benefits. Do we necessarily need a minimum wage? I feel like if we had a minimum wage, we would be expected to work 100% of the time. Like, we would have to be active all the time. We would lose our right to choose which deliveries we want to take. With that low point that we can get literally $0 an hour, but we can also get such a high point where we can truly capitalize on that. And let me know in the comments, would you rather have those highs and lows or consistent flat line? Hey, you're making 20 an hour. That's it. No tips, no nothing. I think that was the major benefit of all of this, is that you can make so much more an hour. A coalition of gig companies is trying to create a third way for these types of workers, while some governments are looking to shoehorn them into existing standards that would likely make them employees. I'm very curious to see what this third way is. Like, okay, we're not independent contractors, what are we? And can you give us a bit more details on what that would look like? I think it's a little too soon for that. In the US, the National Relations Board this week invited briefs due by February 10th whether it should reconsider its standard for determining workers' independent contractor status after some tough talk last year from U.S. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh that signaled action on the way. Also this month, the European Commission proposed new rules that could lead to reclassifications of millions of gig workers in Europe, and India's Supreme Court agreed to hear a petition by gig workers seeking Social Security and other benefits afforded to other workers. We've already discussed the whole National Relations Board thing. I will leave that video in the description. I think that I've already made my position clear. We do not want to be employees, we want to be independent contractors. But after what happened in California with Prop 22, it's possible the key fights with individual states. Massachusetts could be the next big battleground if an industry-backed measure that would create a different category for gig work qualifies for the November ballot. I'm curious to see what happens in Massachusetts, because I think if we're not employees and we're not independent contractors, what does that make us? Massachusetts has become the next ground zero for gig worker classification in the U.S., and a lot of other states are watching to see what happens, said Shannon Lisk-Royden, a lawyer who has represented workers in numerous lawsuits against gig companies. Also, fun fact, when I tried to sue Doordash for wrongfully deactivating me, she gave me a big fat no, so thank you. According to her and other experts, other states may be the gig company's next stop include Washington, Colorado, Illinois, New Jersey, and New York, coming after my home state. A lot of these states are now finally starting the train on attacking gig companies, which I'm not sure how I feel about that yet, but I don't want to be an employee. Prop 22, which was approved by California voters in 2020, exempts gig companies from state law and allows them to keep treating their drivers and delivery workers as independent contractors instead of employees. Massachusetts measure could be the first indications of whether the companies will succeed in their goal of expanding that model elsewhere. Worker advocates say Prop 22 has fallen short in California. Many gig workers still complain about inadequate wages and not qualifying for health insurance subsidies they were promised. The gig companies have said thousands of workers have received the subsidies since the law went into effect. As far as the health insurance subsidies go, let's just be very honest. They didn't get those health insurance subsidies, period. But that's first of all. Second of all, it's really hard to get health insurance to cover anything anyway. They should be paying what you're owed. That's very first of all. I can't even say we because I live in Florida, but those of you who live in California, they should be paid what they were promised. The European Commission's proposal in its early stages could have a sweeping effect if adopted. It would require gig platforms like Uber and its competitors in Europe, such as Deliveroo, to treat drivers and couriers as workers entitled to a minimum wage, paid holidays, unemployment health benefits, and more. The Commission estimates that up to 4.1 million out of 28 million who do gig work in Europe would be reclassified as workers under the EU directive. The proposal follows a UK Supreme Court decision last spring that ordered Uber to treat drivers as workers with some employment benefits, and the decision this month declaring Uber's business model in London is unlawful. What makes it unlawful in the United Kingdom as opposed to unlawful in America? What is the actual difference? I haven't looked into it. I've specialized in America because that's where my first-hand experience is. Uber did not return a request for comment about European proposal on gig work. A Doordash spokesperson said the company is new to the European market and had no comment. Elsewhere, a workforce advisory committee in Ontario, Canada, has recommended a third category for gig workers, like the type of gig companies are seeking. Dependent contractors, not independent contractors, dependent contractors would be entitled to basic employment rights such as minimum wage, minimum or core benefits, and termination pay. The same committee has proposed a portable benefits plan like the one Uber started lobbying for in Canada early this year. Ryan White, a labor lawyer in Canada, said Toronto's government is incredibly friendly to business. They'll pitch this as will give gig workers rights. Jennifer Scott, president of Gig Workers United in Ontario, agreed. Uber lobbies very hard. They use really well-rooted marketing language to veil what they're doing and make it seem like what they're doing is progressive. So what they're doing is, here's what they say that things are happening, and they'll use marketing language that is commonly used throughout multiple industries, yet how they actually operate behind the veil is totally different ballgame. Lack of transparency, treating gig workers like trash, deactivating people wrongfully. I don't know if you notice, I don't like that. Like, these companies should not have such a freedom to deactivate somebody for literally no reason. Looking at promises and transparency. Local and state federal regulators and legislators are looking to the promises of gig companies make to prospective workers and the amount of information and tips they share with those who do the work. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission recently warned gig companies and others that they could be fined up to almost $44,000 per violation if they mislead workers on how much they can earn on their platform. We talked about how the FTC here has been treating gig workers overall and how Doordash directly lied to this exact website, these people, on this exact problem. I'll leave that video in the description if you haven't seen it. Lois Griesman, Associate Director for Marketing Practices at the FTC, told MarketWatch in October that the gig company was an area of serious concern when it comes to promises about wages. Doordash delivery workers say the company, which has said its dashers make an average of $25 an hour, working less than 4 hours a week, does not actually make it clear how much they can earn. They don't show the whole amount up front. Lester Oliverios, who does DoorDash deliveries in Florida's Tampa Bay area, he said since the summer, DoorDash's base pay has gone down to as little as $2.50 per order. Say the facts, man! The amount he sees on the app before he accepts a delivery doesn't disclose exactly how much a customer has tipped, saying that instead that the total may be higher. Why is that important that he repeats it here? These are the same people that have outright stated that DoorDash, specifically, they claim to be these super transparent people and always provide $25 an hour as a wage. He just pointed out that DoorDash just outright lies to everybody they talk to. A DoorDash spokesperson said the company does this to try to give all workers an equal chance at higher value deliveries, while some delivery workers say it is a way to get them to take lower paying orders. Christina Ashford, a DoorDash worker in Vancouver, Washington, started doing deliveries last year when the coronavirus pandemic began and other work as a house cleaner dry up. She also said the base pay is as low as $2.50 per order. Yeah, confirm the facts! And if customers don't tip when they place an order, but instead tip afterwards, she has found that sometimes she doesn't get the full tip. Yeah, DoorDash has been known for stealing tips from DoorDash workers and paying the bills with that. DoorDash has also been known for withholding payments, not paying people the way they're supposed to be paid, not providing the referral bonus as they've been claiming that you can receive. Their business practices have overall been illegal, immoral, and unethical. And I'm just happy when they get put on blast like that. I have never made $25 an hour, she said. There's just no way, even when it's really busy, considering the wear and tear on my car, the gas, the stress. I probably made $15 an hour at most. That's how much Oliveros has been earning on average lately. $15 an hour. He said at one point he was making about $1,000 a week working 40 hours, which would be $25 an hour. But that more recently he was making about $600 a week working the same amount of hours. That is insanely low too. DoorDash has repeatedly said it is transparent about how much workers can earn on each delivery. And a spokesperson again told MarketWatch that its delivery workers receive 100% of the customer's tips. They lie. They always have lied. They always always will lie. On topic of transparency and tips, starting next year, food delivery platforms such as Doordash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub will have to comply with a new California law that requires them to give workers 100% of their tips, provide more information about delivery fees to their restaurant partners and customers, and not charge customers more than restaurants do. The issues the California law addresses are similar to those in a lawsuit filed by the city of Chicago against DoorDash and Grubhub last summer. Among other things, the city's lawsuit accused DoorDash of subsidizing its base pay to drivers with customer tips, which the company denies. The many regulatory issues facing gig companies in the next coming year are concerning to investment analysts up to a point. The business model has been threatened before and has managed to survive, but there are legitimate questions about the company's ability to be profitable, even under current constrictions, much less if new regulations are established and enforced. Now, you see, this is interesting because a lot of times there are new regulations are established, but there's also some time where they're not enforced. We've already proven that in Prop 22, that is an unenforceable law. Tom White, an analyst for D.A. Davidson, agrees that the gig company could be in for some important developments in 2022. Whether it's a watershed year, I don't know, he said, adding that new regulatory issues pop up all the time. For example, the pandemic sparked emergency delivery fee caps that some cities are trying to make permanent. Longer term, increasing regulatory pressure could prompt gig companies to raise prices, possibly reducing their size or opportunities, White said, or they could be forced to exit certain markets. But they do have a little bit of pricing power and consumers keep using their platforms, they said. That's all I got for you this time. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.